problems with a stranger. David shifted the notebook from one arm to the other. What if cost wasn't an issue? Now Maria was really suspicious. She had heard stories about people who offered help that came with strings attached, who preyed on desperate situations. Nothing is free, Mr. Chen. What would you want in return? It was a fair question, and David appreciated her directness. Honestly, company. My wife died 6 months ago, and I've been pretty lonely. I used to help her in the kitchen when she cooked for church events. I miss that feeling of being useful. The answer was so unexpected that Maria didn't know how to respond. She studied his face, looking for signs of deception, but saw only sadness and something that looked like genuine hope. Mama, Diego whispered loudly. Is he the nice man who likes your tamales? SHH, baby. Maria looked back at David. I don't understand. You're offering to let me use a kitchen for free? Not exactly free, David said. I'd like to help sometimes, if you let me. I used to teach high school mathematics before I retired, so I'm good with numbers. Maybe I could help with the business side of things. Maria's mind was racing. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. But something in David's voice, something in the careful way he kept his distance, and spoke softly around the children, made her want to listen. Why me? She asked. You don't even know me. David was quiet for a moment, watching Diego kick at the playground sand. I've been watching you for weeks. The way you treat your customers, the way you take care of your children, the way you help other people even when you're struggling yourself. You remind me of my wife. She always said the best people are the ones who stay kind even when life is hard. Something in his voice when he mentioned his wife made Maria's suspicions soften slightly. She knew that kind of pain, had heard it in her own voice when she talked about her grandmother. What kind of kitchen? She heard herself asking. David's face brightened slightly. It used to be a small restaurant. My friend Tony ran it for 15 years before he retired and moved to Florida. Everything's still there. Commercial stove, prep tables, walk-in cooler. The health department permit is still valid for another 8 months, and you own it. Tony left it to me when he couldn't find anyone to take over the lease. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it ever since. Maria felt Sophia lean against her leg, getting tired of adult conversation. Diego had found a stick and was drawing patterns in the sand, making quiet car sounds under his breath. I would need to see it first, Maria said carefully, and I want to know exactly what you expect from me. Of course, David agreed immediately, and I understand why you're being careful. If I were you, I'd be suspicious too. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. This is my information. The kitchen is about 10 minutes from here. You could follow me in your own car, look around, and leave any time you want. Maria took the card. It was simple. White, with just his name and phone number. Nothing fancy or professional looking, which somehow made her trust it more. What's the catch? She asked bluntly. David smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. The catch is that I'm a retired teacher who doesn't know anything about running a food business, so you'd have to be patient with me. And sometimes I talk too much about my wife, and I make terrible coffee. Even though I think I make good coffee. Despite everything, Maria found herself almost smiling. Those don't sound like terrible catches. Well, I also leave my reading glasses everywhere, and sometimes I hum old songs without realizing it. This time Maria did smile, just a little. Sophia looked up at her with curious eyes, as if she could sense her mother's mood shifting. Can we look at it today? Maria asked. Then immediately second-guessed herself. I mean, if you have time. I don't want to impose. I have all the time in the world, David said gently. That's one of the few advantages of retirement. As they walked toward their cars, Diego running ahead and Sophia holding Maria's hand. David found himself thinking about Eleanor. She would have liked Maria, would have appreciated her strength and her caution in equal measure. Maybe this was why he had been drawn to that park bench every morning, not just to remember Eleanor, but to find a way to honor the kind of person she had been. Maria's Honda made that grinding sound again when she started it. and she saw David notice it in her rearview mirror. Another worry to add to her list, but somehow, for the first time in months, her list of worries felt a little shorter than her list of possibilities. The first month in David's kitchen felt like walking on glass. Maria arrived early every morning, cleaned everything twice, and kept detailed records of every ingredient she used. She wrote down every penny she thought she owed him, even though David kept throwing away her carefully written notes. "You don't owe me anything," he would say, finding her latest list taped to the refrigerator. "This is a gift, not a loan." But Maria couldn't accept that. In her world, everything had a price. And gifts this big always came with expectations. She waited for David to ask for something in return, to reveal what he really wanted from her. The kitchen itself was perfect. Commercial-grade stove with 6 burners, a massive prep table made of stainless steel, and a walk-in cooler that could hold enough ingredients for a week. Everything was clean and organized, left exactly as Tony had arranged it before moving to Florida. Sofia and Diego adapted to the new routine quickly. After school, they would come to the kitchen and do their homework at a small table David had set up in the corner. Sofia helped wash vegetables and measure spices, while Diego arranged takeout containers in neat rows, taking his job very seriously. "Mama," Sofia said one afternoon, looking up from her math worksheet, "why does Mr. David let us use his kitchen?" It was the same question Maria asked herself every day. "He's being kind to us, me Amber." But why? Maria paused in her chopping. Sometimes people help because they remember what it feels like to need help. David usually arrived around 3 o'clock, after the lunch rush was over. He would put on an apron that said "World's Okayest Cook," a gift from Eleanor years ago, and ask what needed to be done. At first, Maria gave him simple tasks: washing dishes, wiping tables, organizing supplies. But she soon discovered that David was actually a good cook. "Eleanor taught me," he explained one day, expertly dicing onions while Maria prepared masa for tamales. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was helpless. "She sounds like my grandmother," Maria replied. Rosa always said cooking was the most important gift you could give someone. They fell into an easy rhythm. David handled the business paperwork that made Maria's head spin: health department forms, tax documents, inventory tracking. Maria focused on what she did best: creating food that made people smile. The first catering order came through Mrs. Patterson, David's neighbor, who was planning her daughter's graduation party. 50 people, she said, and she had heard about Maria's amazing tamales from David. "I don't know." Maria worried, pacing the kitchen. What if something goes wrong? What if the food isn't good enough? "The food will be perfect," David said calmly, cleaning his glasses. "I've been eating it for weeks, but this is different. This is real business." David stopped what he was doing and looked at her seriously. "Maria, you've been running a real business. Now you just have a real kitchen to do it in." The graduation party was a success. Mrs. Patterson's guests asked for Maria's contact information, and by the end of the week, she had 3 more bookings. Word spread through David's neighborhood, then beyond. One evening, as they cleaned up, after preparing food for a church fundraiser, Diego fell asleep in his chair. Sofia was reading quietly in the corner, and Maria found herself washing dishes beside David in comfortable silence. "Can I ask you something?" Maria said softly. Of course." "What was she like, your wife?" David smiled, drying a large pot slowly. "She was stubborn, really stubborn, and smart, much smarter than me. She taught second grade for 35 years and knew the name of every single student she ever had. She sounds wonderful. She also worried too much, just like you do." David glanced at Maria with gentle humor. "She would have liked you. Would have scolded you for trying to pay me back, though." Maria laughed quietly. "I can't help it. My grandmother raised me to never take charity." "This isn't charity," David said. "This is family helping family." The word family hung in the air between them. Maria felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tight control she kept on her emotions. "I miss having family around." David continued. Eleanor and I never had children. We always said we would someday. But someday never came. Then she got sick, and suddenly there was no more time for someday. Maria turned to look at him, seeing the sadness he usually kept hidden behind his helpful smile. The kitchen was too quiet after she died, he said. Everything was too quiet. When I saw you with Sophia and Diego, saw how you took care of them and your customers, it reminded me what family sounds like. That night, Maria didn't write down what she thought she owed David. Instead, she called her sister Carmen in Houston and told her about the kind man who was helping them rebuild their lives. Are you sure he's not expecting anything? Carmen asked, her voice full of older sister worry. I thought he was, Maria admitted, but I think he's just lonely, and maybe we needed each other. The business grew steadily. Maria hired her neighbor's teenage daughter to help with weekend events. She bought a used van to deliver larger orders, and David helped her paint Abuelo's kitchen on the side in bright red letters. Sophia started calling David Abuelo David without anyone telling her to. It happened naturally, the way family bonds often do. Diego followed his sister's lead, and soon David was helping with homework and attending school events like any grandfather would. One evening, as Maria counted the day's earnings, more money than she had seen in months, David sat at the small table with Sophia and Diego, teaching them to play chess with a worn wooden set that had belonged to Eleanor. Check, Sophia announced proudly, moving her queen. Very good, David said. But look at your king. Is he safe? Maria watched them, remembering her grandmother's words about food made with love. This kitchen, this strange little family they had created, was seasoned with something deeper than spices. It was made with the kind of love that grows between people who choose to care for each other. For the first time since her world had fallen apart, Maria felt something she had almost forgotten. How to feel. She felt safe. Not just financially safe, though that was part of it. She felt emotionally safe, surrounded by people who cared about her and her children without expecting anything in return. The eviction notice was gone from her apartment door, replaced by a receipt showing her rent was current, the electricity stayed on, the refrigerator was full, and every evening her children fell asleep happy and secure, dreaming of tomorrow instead of worrying about it. David had given her more than a kitchen. He had given her back her hope. 1 year later, Maria stood at the edge of Riverside Park, watching families gather for the annual community festival. Tables lined the walkway, each one representing a different local business or organization. Her table sat right in the center, with a banner that read Abuelo's Kitchen, food made with love in bright colors that Sophia had helped design. The morning sun felt warm on her face as she arranged containers of tamales, fresh sauces, and pitchers of horchata. Diego and Sophia worked beside her, their movements confident and practiced. They had grown so much in the past year, not just taller, but more secure, more confident in their place in the world. David arrived carrying folding chairs and wearing his lucky apron, the one that said world's okayest cook. At 78, he moved a little slower than when they first met, but his eyes were brighter. The sadness that used to follow him, like a shadow, had lifted, replaced by the contentment of a man who had found his purpose again. Ready for the lunch rush? He asked, setting up chairs behind their table. Born ready, Maria replied, using one of his favorite expressions. The festival officially opened at 10 o'clock, and within minutes, a line had formed at their table. Maria recognized many of the faces, regular customers who had become friends, neighbors who had watched their business grow, and new people, drawn by the incredible smells coming from their setup. Mrs. Patterson was among the first customers, bringing her new son-in-law to try Maria's famous tamales. This is the woman I told you about, she said proudly, best cook in the city. As Maria served customer after customer, she noticed a young man standing at the edge of their area, counting coins in his palm with the careful attention of someone who didn't have many. His clothes were clean but worn, and something about his posture reminded her of herself a year ago. During a brief lull, she approached him. Can I help you with something? He looked up, embarrassed. I was just smelling your food, It smells amazing. But I don't think I have enough money. Maria glanced back at David, who was watching with knowing eyes. He nodded almost imperceptibly. What's your name? She asked the young man. Carlos. I just started working at the auto shop down the street. Well, Carlos. It's our policy to feed hard-working people, especially new neighbors. She handed him a plate loaded with two tamales, rice, beans, and a generous scoop of guacamole. Pay it forward when you can. Carlos stared at the plate, then at Maria, his eyes getting watery. Are you serious? Very serious? And next week, if you want to come by our kitchen after work, I could use some help loading delivery trucks. I pay fair wages. As Carlos walked away with his plate, trying to thank her in both English and Spanish, Sophia tugged on Maria's apron. Mama, that was nice. Your abuelo David taught me that kindness grows when you share it, Maria said, ruffling her daughter's hair. The afternoon brought a surprise that made Maria's heart soar. A reporter from the local newspaper approached their table, asking if she could interview Maria about her business success story. We're doing a series on local entrepreneurs, she explained. Your story came up several times when we asked people about inspiring businesses in the community. As Maria answered questions about her journey from park vendor to successful caterer, she caught David wiping his eyes with his apron. When the reporter asked about her biggest supporter, Maria didn't hesitate. This man right here, she said, pulling David into the conversation. David Chen. He gave me a chance when no one else would. He believed in me before I believed in myself. And what did you get out of it? The reporter asked David. David looked at Sophia and Diego, who were serving horchata to customers with serious concentration. Then at Maria, who was glowing with pride and confidence. I got a family, he said simply, and I got to watch something beautiful grow. As the day wound down and they cleaned up their table, Maria made an announcement that had been building in her heart for months. I've been thinking, she said, stacking empty containers. I want to start a program, a fund to help other people who are struggling to start food businesses. David stopped wiping tables and looked at her with interest. We could call it the Eleanor Chen Memorial Fund, Maria continued, to help people get permits, find kitchen space, learn about running a business, give them what you gave me, a chance. David's smile was brighter than the afternoon sun. Eleanor would love that idea. I already talked to Mr. Rodriguez at the bank, Sophia chimed in, proud of her secret. He said if we save up enough money, we can start the fund next year. You talked to the bank? Maria asked, amazed. Abuelo David took me when you were busy cooking last week. I told him about your idea, and he said it was very mature thinking. That evening, as they sat around the kitchen table sharing leftover tamales and planning the fund, Maria felt a deep sense of completion. Not an ending, but a beginning that felt like coming home. The young woman who had sat in her car a year ago, devastated by rejection letters, felt like a different person. That woman had been alone, afraid, and running out of hope. This woman was surrounded by chosen family, building something meaningful, and looking forward to tomorrow. Carlos stopped by just as they were closing up, still clutching his empty plate. Mrs. Maria, he said shyly, I wanted to thank you again, and to ask about that job you mentioned. Maria smiled, remembering another young woman who had needed someone to believe in her. Can you start Monday? As they locked up the kitchen and walked to their cars, Diego slipped his small hand into David's weathered one. Abuelo, are we rich now? David considered the question seriously. What do you think being rich means, Diego? Having lots of money. That's one kind of rich. David said, but I think we're rich in a different way. We're rich in love, rich in friendship, rich in having enough food to share with people who need it. Then yes, Diego declared, we're very rich. Maria listened to this conversation with a full heart, thinking about all the rejections that had led her to this moment. Every closed door had guided her toward the open one. Every no had brought her closer to the most important yes of her life. The circle of kindness that started with David's gift had grown wider than any of them could have imagined, and tomorrow they would wake up and make it grow a little wider still.